Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and when it comes to Thanksgiving, there are certainly some traditions that I have grown up with and some that continue to this day. When I think about Thanksgiving, I think about football. And I think about Pat Summerall and John Madden on the call. And there's just something different about the vibe of a Thanksgiving game with them there. Those that grew up and watched that understand what I'm talking about. Those that didn't, I'm sorry you missed out. But truly, a different kind of vibe. You also have the Thanksgiving tradition of no matter what the Lions were going to be um, playing in the first Thanksgiving game, and the Cowboys are playing the second one. Like that hasn't changed over the years, right? And then most notably, when they get put in this slot, you're going to have Bears football stinking up the joint in front of a national television audience. Oh boy, can't wait. And while Madden and Summerall are long gone, the Lions are playing on Thanksgiving. We are also getting that other tradition, you could pretty much count on it, of Bears football getting ready to be shown to a national TV audience. So let's talk about this Thanksgiving matchup. And if we want to talk about any positives for Bears fans, it's a couple of things. One, there's 6 games left in the season. 2, Caleb, and that's probably the most important one, but 2, this is a pretty important one too. Caleb Williams played great last week, and he's had some flashes of showing he could be the guy. That's a positive. And number 3, with this game being on Thanksgiving, many of you will be so full of food and tryptophan and other crap that it just won't bother you that much. Or even if it does, at least it's on Thursday, and you'll have another 10 games where you have to worry about the Bears playing again, and you can go enjoy your weekend. So there are certainly some positives here, right? It's certainly not going to come mostly from the on-the-field play of da Bears. Because when you look at the Lions, they're a real Super Bowl contender, and they're arguably favorites in the whole NFC. They might be the favorites, period, right? I still would say, until proven otherwise, the road to the Super Bowl in the AFC, and frankly, the Super Bowl as a whole, ultimately has to go through Kansas City, and somebody's going to have to knock them off that perch. And until proven otherwise, they have to be the favorites. But if you're looking outside of that, who's the next team up? It's going to be teams like the Lions, the Ravens, the Bills, and maybe the Eagles. They're going to be the ones in the mix. And it's interesting to me how in a few short years, Dan Campbell went from being a coach that everybody mocked because of his kind of initial press conference to being a top-level head coach that other fan bases of other teams say, I wish I had that guy setting the tone in my locker room. I wish I had that guy creating the culture that the players would be willing to walk through walls for. And I remember a few years ago doing a video about this, like, laugh about Dan Campbell now at your own expense. Mock him at your own expense. And, you can see why. Bears fans certainly will be eagerly tuning into this game. Not so much because of the Bears, probably because they want to see if their next head coach is there and Ben Johnson. Want to see how Ben Johnson does in this game, the offensive coordinator of the Lions. I don't know that Ben Johnson's going to be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears, but he certainly would be a candidate. He's certainly going to be in the mix for consideration come January. I'd be stunned if he wasn't and wasn't even like a top contender. In terms of this Lions team, though, when you look at them, they only have 1 loss on the season. Their offense is first in points scored. Their defense is second in fewest points allowed. They run the ball really well, and they're really hard to run against. Those tend to be pretty good things to have in your back pocket as kind of like table stake foundational pieces for your team come the playoffs. Now, I still have concerns about how well their secondary can hold up against better passing teams. What can you really expect out of Jared Goff in big situations? Is he a guy that you just win games with, or is he a guy that in big spots you can win games because of? So I still have some questions about this Lions team, but there is no question right now. They've got a great offense. They're really good defensively in terms of keeping teams out of the end zone, limiting the damage from a point standpoint. They run the ball really well with Monty and Gibbs, and they're tough to run against. That's a formula that you can win a lot of games with, even in today's NFL. Meanwhile, for the Bears, it's another week, and eagerly waiting to see how they trick off another potential win. You had the Fail Mary against the Commanders a few weeks ago. You had the block field goal against the Packers. Then you had the, hey, somebody finally recovered an onside kick, and the Bears score 11 points in like 2 minutes. and then still find a way to trick it off in overtime. And after starting 4-2, they're now sitting at 4-7 and trending towards losing out and getting really close here. And we're probably there at this moment, folks, is in tank mode, right? Like, lose them all, Chicago. You really benefit none from winning any of these remaining 6 games. Just saying. But that does beg the question. Matt Eberflus is still the head coach of this team. Why? If you want to say that the one reason he's there is because the one thing he's good at is tanking, you know what? That is a legitimate point. There are not too many head coaches in NFL history that are as adept and as skilled at tanking as Matt Eberflus is. Although you could counter last year, they won some meaningless games, which opened up the door for him to even come back in 2024, which was going to lead to a fucking epic disaster, blah, blah, blah. But other than that, just give Thomas Brown the fucking reins and let him be the head coach the last 6 games. Why is that so hard? Gives you a chance to evaluate whether he could be the head guy long term, especially with Caleb kind of responding to him. I get the notion of, well, let him focus on Caleb and the offense, but no, like, the bigger key is, like, who's going to be that next head coach, because you know it's not going to be Matt Eberflus. As I mentioned earlier, Caleb Williams, he did have a great performance against the Vikings, over 340 yards passing, like, against a defense that likes to get after it a lot. Caleb really held his own, even though in overtime he had the kind of bad mistake of sitting there waiting forever and eating a really, really bad sack. You just can't do that. But then you could argue, well, they don't get in that spot without Caleb and some of the big plays he made in the passing game. So there you go. Meanwhile, the one thing that a lot of Bears fans and a lot of people could point to and say, well, this is what Eberflus does. He doesn't even do that anymore. The defense gave up 30 points last week. And, you know, here's how funny it is when you talk about the Bears and you talk about Bears football. When you look at the defensive coordinator, everybody just assumes it's Matt Eberflus. It's his defense, even though he's technically not the defensive coordinator. We all fucking know he is. So there's an opportunity like, hey, be a defensive coordinator on Matt Eberflus when the defense sucks. Everybody blames him and used to get paid like an NFL defensive coordinator. Not a bad job and not a bad gig if you can get it. Except that you also absolutely suck. Like all this talk about, oh, the Eberflus defense is doing its job, they're solid. No, in key moments and key points, they screw up. And then last week, they just totally, completely shit the bed. They aren't that depleted by injuries or anything else to be able to sit there and justify why the hell they're giving up 30 points to a Sam Darnold-led team. Give me a frickin' break. So not surprisingly, when you look at the betting odds for this one, Detroit are 10-point favorites. The over-under is 48.5. A lot of folks that are putting money on this, assuming I'm sure the Lions are going to put 30-plus points, and it's a reasonable expectation. You're talking about the Lions, the best scoring team in the league, the Bears, in front of a national TV audience, destined to play Bears football and keep the folks entertained, watching at home that are choking down some turkey and stuffing because they're just going to give up touchdowns left and right. When you look at keys to victory for this game for the Lions, well, you already have one. Matt Eberflus is still the head coach of the Chicago Bears. That's the biggest key to victory of all, if we're being completely honest. But if we want to go beyond that to the secondary factors that are keys for the Lions to win here, it's heavy doses of Monty and Gibbs in the running game. The Bears are bad against the run, and the Lions are a damn good running team. You know, this is about matchups here, and this matchup heavily, heavily, heavily favors Detroit. Other thing they can do offensively is attack that Bears secondary down the field. You've seen it the past couple of weeks. You saw it with Green Bay and Christian Watson and several big plays down the field. You saw it last week a few times with Jordan Addison and others. The Vikings being able to attack the Bears secondary down the field. Not only just target Tyreek Stevenson whenever he's on the field, but just attack him deep. Just go after it deep. You might draw a pass interference penalty on Jalen Johnson. There is no reason not to use the running game to set up your play action pass if you want to be old school about it, and then throw that fucker down the field to Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, whatever. And then in terms of the defense, just keep the Bears receivers in front of you. Don't let them hit any big plays. Keep everything like 15 yards and in. And if they hit some of those pass plays, you can live with that because eventually the Bears will get into red zone and they'll have to be precise, and that's where they can struggle. In terms of the Bears, you got about 3 keys to victory here. Number 1, lock Matt Eberflus in the bathroom at the terminal so that way he can't board the team plane. If that doesn't work, lock Matt Eberflus's hotel room from the outside, so that way he can't get out and he can't make it to Ford Field. And when all else fails, give him a headset. That doesn't work. I don't know what else to tell you here at this point. We're looking for other reasons that this Bears team could win. Like maybe it's just the fact of the Lions turn the ball over a few times. Hey, when you've got Jared Goff, if he goes into Jared Goof mode, it can happen. Like even the Bears are, as an NFL team, can take advantage of mistakes and turnovers. So if you're Lions, like all joking aside, what's something you got to do? Don't turn the ball over. Make the Bears earn it the hard way, because if you do, they won't. Don't give them gifts. And if you're the Bears, you got to force turnovers here. It's the only fucking shot you got. You know, that and Caleb going ballistic in this one. I think the Lions are going to win this comfortably, something like 30-17. Everybody's going to see on national TV, like, what the hell are the Bears doing here with Eberflus? He's a clown. He sucks, and he's got to go. But we know the Crypt Keeper and Goofy George, yuck, when they realize that firing Eberflus now means they'd have to pay him the last 2 years of his contract to not coach for the team. It's going to be a ah! So we'll be stuck with 5 more weeks of Bears football!